Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope y'all are doing alright. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing the United States Women's National Team versus New Zealand in the second game of the Olympic tournament for the group stages of Group G. I will be discussing the goal score, the goals we conceded, some tactical changes that we made compared to the first game. I'll be discussing the players, my thoughts on them, and just my overall thoughts going into the next game against Australia. As always, timestamps will be included in the description. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Like and subscribe, let me know what you think down below, and without further ado, let's get started. The starting lineup. So compared to the last game, we had 5 changes to the starting lineup. Our goalkeeper was the same. We came out with Lindsey Horan, and there were 2 changes to the back line. With the addition of Tierna Davidson and Sonnett, our back line now consisted of Dahlkemper and Tierna Davidson in the back as the center backs, and as the outside backs, it was Sonnett and Christen Press. In the middle, there was 1 change of Ertz starting. She started as the number 6, and the 2 attacking midfielders remained as Lindsey Horan and Lavelle. And up top, there were 2 changes. Carly Lloyd and Megan Rapinoe were added to the lineup, and Tobin Heath remained as a starter. I think this was some great rotations that was definitely needed, and I think we'll see probably the same amount of changes going into the next game against Australia. In the first half. So we knew coming into this game that it was a must-win. I mean, based off of the defeat we had earlier in the tournament, we had to score as many goals as we could against New Zealand to help with the goal differential, and we definitely came out and accomplished that. The mentality, the tempo, the speed of play, everything was so much better than against Sweden. We were playing 1 to 2 touch passes. We weren't holding on to it too long. We knew what we wanted to do before we got the ball, and we were just playing quickly, and all of that combined really helped us to get from the back line to the midfield to up top in a much quicker fashion compared to against Sweden. Not only that, but our midfielders were making runs backwards and forwards out of the back, which is really hard to defend against, especially when you have midfielders running into the back line and you have forwards checking back and vice versa. Not only that, but our outside backs were doing a great job getting into the attack as well. And just overall, everybody's mindset was so much more intense going into this game. Obviously, this team doesn't like to lose, and a defeat like that definitely got them riled up, and the response is, I couldn't have asked for a better response from this team. Now, obviously, we had 4 disallowed goals. I think one of them could have been contested, but the ref called it offsides. It was Lindsey Horan's first header goal. I don't think it was offsides, but I've only seen the clip once. I've gotten some comments before saying that I've been like too overcritical of this team, but we go and lose against Sweden 3-0, and it's like there's always room for improvement, and there's always room to be critical of a team, especially the team like the United States Women's National Team that has always been the best. That's always been so good, and they've never had any issues. You know, it's like when you're constantly doing so good, you need somebody to challenge you, and you need someone to put you in your place and to show you what you're doing wrong, because there's always room for improvement. And so, yes, while you can take positives away from every game, there's always something you can work on and get better. And I think from this game, and it's a reoccurring theme throughout this tournament and with this team, is aerial play in our back line is not good enough. And specifically with Dahlkemper, I'll talk a little bit more about her later, but she doesn't track her runs at all, and that is not good. I mean, that's rule number 1 of being a center back, or even any player on the field. If you're in the box and a cross is played in, you have to track your runner. And I understand it's tough, especially if you're not goal side. There's a really easy way to fix this, right? The ball is played in the air and you don't know where your man went. Follow the ball, because that's all you can do at that point is see if you can win the header yourself. And she doesn't even do that either. In the first game against Sweden, they would play cross in, and she would leave her man, run 5 yards ahead, and the ball would go over her head. And that's the absolute last thing you want to do. We noticed the same issue with New Zealand, and Christen Press's goal is the center back allowed the cross to go over her head. And once the ball's over your head, it's pretty much game over, because you have no way to recover. You have to completely turn around and then try to readjust yourself, and by that point, the shot's already been taken. And so with Dahlkemper, it's like if you can't track your defender, at least track the ball in the air, because that's the best thing you can do at that point, is see if you can win that in the air. I completely managed to forget the point here, but the point was New Zealand got a free header because Dahlkemper let the ball go over her head. And that was the closest they came to scoring, and it could have completely changed the outcome of this game, because we would have been 1-1 going into halftime. So it's one of those things that we need to fix, and we need to fix quickly. And she doesn't even do that. She just lets the ball run over her head, and I just do not understand how she can keep getting away with this and no one is saying anything to her. But with that said, I'm going to move on to the positives, which is our goals. The first goal we scored, it was a great team build-up. Alyssa played a long ball out from the 18, and Carly tracked back and won the header flicked it on to Lindsey Horan, who was able to take a great touch, but the New Zealand defender was able to get a touch on it and kind of get her off the ball, but it went straight to Tobin Heath, who, in a great heads-up play, just one touched it past the back line, and Rose Lavelle was making the run, and she just slotted it past the goalkeeper. It was a great finish, and it was a great team build-up, and it was the right response that we needed coming out of the loss against Sweden. I like the interchange between our midfielders and our forwards. You see Carly Lloyd tracking back into the midfield position, occupying Rose's space, and Rose leaving her space to then take Carly's. It's really hard to defend against that, and it's really hard to predict where those players are going to go. And then you have a player like Lindsey Horan, who's just occupying the space in the confusion with the New Zealand defense, operating in the spaces that she wasn't able to find against Sweden, and making her mark early on in the game as well. And I just think that overall it was a great team build-up, great team interchange, and it was a fantastic response. The second goal, Rapinoe's corners, I've mentioned this plenty of times on my channel. I don't think she should be taking them. I'd rather see Tobin take it. And while I think this one was overhit, Julie Ertz was able to recover and head it across the 6 to Lindsey Horan, who got her header in. The goal actually counted. I think it was actually a great play. I don't know if it was intentional or if it was planned, because it drew Julie Ertz out of the picture to contest a header in a way that she was able to lose her mark, because you just couldn't track her through all the players. Being able to get onto the back post and head it across, it's so hard to defend against that. And even as a keeper, like, how do you come out? You got to come out and punch it and be strong. But Horan was stronger and was able to get her head on the ball. And so I think that is a corner that we can start doing. Initially when it was hit, whether it was intentional or not, I really don't know. It worked. And we did it again after that, and it almost worked. Julie just couldn't quite wrap her head around it. But maybe that's something we can try instead of these near post ones that just Pino's not hitting them enough. I think overall in the first half, despite the fact that we almost got scored on in the 43rd minute by a header on New Zealand's end, I mentioned that a little bit earlier, how Dahlkemper let the ball go over her head and didn't track it. I think despite that, we had a pretty solid performance, and our bounce back after the prior loss was a great response to what we needed. In the second half, we were finding lots of success down the right side of the field, and this was mainly through the runs from our midfielders, which, like I mentioned, we weren't seeing that a lot against Sweden. Players like Sam Mewis, Lindsey Horan, and Julie Ertz particularly were making these runs out of the midfield to occupy the space where the right midfielder or the right forward would be. And by taking that space, either the holding midfielder of the other team who's marking them, they either have to track with or try to communicate with their teammate to go with, and it's hard to make the adjustment to try to cut off those passing lanes. And so those runs would draw space and create lanes that we were able to exploit. And that's actually how the third goal we scored was created, is Lindsey Horan made a great run out of the midfield and ended up playing a great combination 1-2 pass with Emily Sonnett, and she was able to get her cross off just outside the 18-yard box. And Carly Lloyd checked in, checked back a little, able to peel off her defender, won the header, and Abby Ertz unfortunately had to concede the own goal due to the pressure of Tobin Heath and Megan Rapinoe. We ended up getting our third goal, and then New Zealand scored. And the goal we conceded, obviously, I mean, there's really not anybody else you can blame except Dahlkemper, and it's really hard because I don't like to blame goals on one person only because it's a team sport. Against Sweden, it's like there were so many players to blame for the goals, but this one, I'm sorry. Sometimes you just have to say, listen, I fucked up, it's my fault, and that's what happened. Dahlkemper just doesn't have the tactical ability to handle the ball under pressure, and we've seen that before in plenty of games. It's like the ball will come to her and she's under pressure and she can't trap it and try to find a pass, so she just kicks it. And while I don't necessarily think her trying to clear it in that situation was the wrong decision, I think that was the right decision. She just shanked it. I understand stuff happens, but you're a national team player. You play for the United States. You are, quote-unquote, the best center back this nation has to offer, and you can't clear the ball without shanking it with your left foot. Like, that's outrageous to me, I'm sorry. Dahlkemper shanks it, and then in her recovery run, just eats it. Then it's like, what do you do? What does Alyssa do in that situation? I think Alyssa did the best she could. She closed down the initial shot. I think that's all you could have asked for her to do. At that point, it's up to the rest of the team to try to recover. And then Emily Sonnett's put in an awful position because she doesn't know whether she needs to step or if Alyssa's going to step to the shot. She also has a man she's trying to mark, so she doesn't know if she needs to cut off the pass or what to do. It's an awful situation to be put in. Whether it's Sam Mewis or Rose Lavelle, I don't recall. They didn't track back to try to defend the third person in the box, who ended up scoring. And then we scored our 4th goal. Julia Ertz, like I mentioned, was making these wide runs. She made a run outside to the right flank, received the ball, and played a lovely cross to Christen Press, who just took a fantastic first touch and just slotted it in the bottom right corner. The ball was able to go over the center back's head because she wasn't tracking her run, so Press had enough time to control it and place it in the bottom right corner. But it was such a difficult finish because you had to be so composed on the ball and made sure you got your laces through it to prevent it from, skying over the goal or shanking or whatever. She was a great addition to this team in the second half. The 5th goal, Christen Press was also involved in. She got the ball out wide and had a fantastic cross across the box. And these types of crosses are so hard to defend against because you have a player like Tobin Heath who's making a run inside towards the middle of the 6-yard box, kind of by the penalty mark. And she almost got onto it, but her making that run was enough of a distraction that the ball ended up making it all the way through to the back post to Alex Morgan, who took a great touch forward and just slotted it past the keeper. The composure that Alex Morgan had to find the back of the net, it was just a great team goal. And I'm so glad that she was able to score because I think it will definitely help her confidence going into this tournament because I feel like she's been on a bit of a dry spell recently in terms of goals. And the last goal we scored was an own goal, so technically we didn't score it, but Sam Ewis got the ball wide, like I had been mentioning earlier. Common theme is we were finding success down the right side and then having the switched it to Christen Press in a great through ball. She took a first-time shot, and I don't know if it would have been on target. The New Zealand defender tried to make a play on it and unfortunately redirected it back into her own goal. Combination between our forwards in the first and the second half with Megan Rapinoe, Carly Lloyd, and Tobin Heath. I thought they all were great in the first half. Obviously, we had goals that were disallowed, so it's really hard to blame players for not contributing because they definitely did. It was just disallowed. That's something we can try to work on going into the next game, is making sure we stay onside. And then in the second half, again, our front three was working fantastic together. And so I think this is great for us going into the next game because it creates confidence and chemistry between the front three in the first and the second half. And not to mention the midfield I thought was fantastic as well. Julia Ertz was such a great addition to this team, player we had been missing so badly. So I think we're finally kind of getting our groove back, and defensively we had our slip-ups, but I think it's stuff we can work on and it's stuff that we can fix, and I'd rather us get scored on now so we can figure it out and work on it in training than later down the line in the tournament be confronted with this. Despite our errors, I think it's best to get them out of the way now so that we can tackle them and work on them and then be more prepared going into the next game against Australia. Players, I'm going to discuss the players now, but I'm going to be a little brief just because it's really tough to give an accurate reading on everybody considering I can't go back and rewatch these games multiple times. So I'm basically just going off of what I've written down live during the game and my memory and what I thought and during the replays. So the first player I'd like to talk about is probably somebody you could have predicted my first player to discuss, which would be Abby Dahlkemper. I roasted her pretty hard in my last video, but I'm sorry, sometimes you just have to do that. Like I mentioned earlier, everybody was being way too nice with this team and not critical enough. Abby Dahlkemper has to be better. You are a center back for the United States women's national team. You are starting in the Olympics. You have to be better. And if you go back and look, all 4 goals that we've conceded in this tournament, Dahlkemper can be linked to every one of them in some way. She can't control the ball. She can't pass very well. You have to bring more to the table than just your long balls because Tierna Davidson can do the same thing. That's not what sets you apart. It's, can you defend well? Are you strong in the air? Are you aggressive? Can you defend 1v1? Do you have a high soccer IQ? Can you read the game? Do you have good spatial awareness? Do you have good awareness of the pressure of the other team, where the forwards are? And I would be concerned with Dahlkemper starting against Australia because of a player like Sam Kerr. If Australia is doing their homework, they've for sure pointed out her. Tierna Davidson. I thought Tierna was fantastic. She's 22 years old, but is playing like a veteran who's been with this team for years. Her confidence, her calmness, her spatial awareness to understand when the pressure's coming, when to get rid of the ball, and when she can hold on to it. I love Tierna because her distribution going forward is always positive. She's always going to connect that pass going forward, and she's always going to look for the option. If it might not be on, then she'll go back. And I was so impressed with her. I mean, it's her first Olympic cap, and she didn't look nervous at all. I am so excited to see what she does going forward in her career with this team. She's going to be such a key player to our success in so many years to come. I'd love to see her start next game because I think it would be a great test for her up against Sam Kerr as well as Becky Sauerbrunn, and I think they work together really well. And I think Tierna also works really well with the players next to her outside back, her holding mid, and I think she just has great connections with everybody on the field, and she just looks like such a seamless fit when she steps onto the field. Emily Sonnett. I think this was one of the best games I've seen Sonnett play, and I know a lot of people were giving her heat because her and Dahlkemper didn't really work well together. I think it's one of those things where it's like Dahlkemper is already so structurally unstable, and you put someone like Emily Sonnett who likes to get forward and be a little bit more bold, you put those two players next to each other and it's kind of concerning. And their spacing together wasn't the best, but I think Sonnett had a really good game going forward. I think offensively she was great. She was making fantastic runs and she was connecting in the final third. Her and Horan's connection was fantastic in setting up the third goal. Again, this was also her first Olympic start, and I think she looked great. Now I think it's tough because when you put two players together, like I mentioned, her and Dahlkemper, it's pretty tough to get their connection to be on board. So I think if it was her and Becky or her and Tierna, we'd be more solid defensively. But I think she put in a great shift, did some great work, and I'm excited to see what she does throughout the rest of this tournament. Julie Ertz. We miss Julie so much. She's the backbone of our team. She's the anchor of the midfield. She provides the stability of our midfield so that players like Horan, Mewis, and Lavelle can go forward and be a little bit more creative and a little bit more bold. Because they know if they lose it, Ertz is going to be there to clean up their mistakes and be able to redistribute the ball back to them. We know Ertz is going to go into every tackle with 100% effort. We know she's going to win the ball back. We know she's going to be physical. She's going to win balls in the air. Defensively, she's wonderful, but offensively, her contribution is just, it sometimes goes unnoticed, but in this game especially, it's really put on the spotlight on how essential she is going forward because her distribution going forward is fantastic. She knows when to play it, when not to, when to switch the field, when not to. Her runs out of midfield as well. She senses which way the ball needs to be played in the space that's open, and she runs into that space. And she assisted Christen's goal by doing exactly that. Getting wide and receiving the ball and having the heads-up play to be able to play to Christen. But Julie's just the player we are missing. She's the key to this team's success, and if she can stay healthy and get minutes under her belt to continue to grow into this tournament, I think we'll be really successful with her in the middle. Lindsey Horan. She's one of those players that I'm just so proud of. It was her 100th cap, and she came out with so much energy. She helped to create the first goal by winning the ball off of Carly's header and going forward. She also had a goal that was disallowed, and then she didn't let that get to her and continued to stay dangerous in the box and ended up getting her header that counted. And she's just one of those players that you can always count on to give it 100%. She's going to try her best in the offense to create chances. She's going to make runs out of the back. She's going to be aggressive. She's going to go into the challenge hard. I think it's just tough for Horan because, she's been forced to play in a position she's not used to playing. Playing in the holding midfield position, it's such a different mindset. To transition back and forth between those mindsets is really tough, and especially playing against a team like Sweden, she hasn't really been tested in that holding midfield position. We're playing teams like Mexico, and so I think there's a lot of pressure on her to be the Julie Ertz. But it's one of those things where it's like when you don't play that position, yeah, you can make up for it the best you can. But at the end of the day, it's like instincts, experience, and so many things go into being a holding midfielder. I don't think anybody can disagree that she's more effective offensively. That's where she likes to be. She likes to be on the ball. She likes to create chances. Horan was also involved in the third goal that we scored, the own goal. She made the connection with Emily Sonnett and ended up playing the cross into Carly Lloyd, who got the header, and then obviously the own goal resulted from that header, so she was involved in the offense a lot. And I'm glad she's finally getting minutes in a major tournament because I think she's been fantastic, and I think she really deserves it based on all the hard work she's put in for club and country. Rose Lavelle. I don't think Rose played bad against Sweden, but in this game, she definitely showed the type of player she is. She was making runs out of the midfield, checking back to get the ball. She was turning. She was taking players on 1v1. She was making runs into the final third. She was everywhere. She was involved in goals that were disallowed, obviously, and she obviously scored the first goal, which was a phenomenal finish. The composure to just place it near post, sometimes those are hard. She had a lot of time to think about her shot, and sometimes when you have a lot of time, you overthink it, and you ended up shooting it wide or shooting it high, but she placed it perfectly past the keeper, and she was just phenomenal overall. Her runs are so influential to pull apart the midfield of the New Zealand's midfield, and her work defensively, how she gets back and makes those hard tackles despite being a pretty small player. She's going to give you feistiness, creativity, speed, quickness. You know what she's going to give, and she showed it in this game what she's made of. And I'm really excited to see what she does going into the game against Australia, because I think she's building on a lot of momentum, and I think she's going to be a huge part of this team's success. Christen Press. I mean, Press is phenomenal. She's world class. I don't know what more you could say from her. For this game, she definitely came out. She shrugged off all the negativity, all of the questions surrounding her, and she just said, you know, I'm just going to go play my game and do my job. She came on, she scored a fantastic goal. The composure, I don't think people realize how tough of a goal it is to score. You have so much time, the ball's in the air for so long, and you know it's coming to you, and she was able to trap it so well and just place it in the bottom corner. I think a lot of players would have chose to go for power instead of placement, and Press chose to go for placement, which is a sign of her maturity and a sign of her excellence in the final third. Not only that, but she had an assist. She was getting the ball wide, had a fantastic cross. It was in such a dangerous position that the New Zealand defenders didn't know if they should go for it or wait, and Alex Morgan ended up getting on the end of it as well. And then she was also involved in the second own goal that was scored in the final goal. She had a one-time shot. New Zealand tried their best to make a defensive play on it and ended up scoring an own goal. But Press was only on the field for 25 minutes, and she scores a goal, has an assist, and indirectly creates the own goal. I think it was great to get her minutes of rest, and not only that, but the confidence that she's going to carry on to the next game and the momentum that she's going to take into the next game, especially against an opponent like Australia where we need to win. I'm very excited to see what she does. Lastly is Alex Morgan. Alex Morgan, ever since having her baby, she's been lackluster, but I think it's one of those things where it's like I could never judge, because I would never be able to come back after having a child. Like, it just blows my mind how women can do that. But I think this goal that she scored, similar scenario where she had a lot of time as well to think about it. The ball came to her and she had to take a touch going forward, had a fantastic touch, and then she has to sit down and think, okay, I can either go for power or placement. She went for placement. It was a fantastic goal, and I'm just really hoping that this will fire her up into the next game and get her making better runs and better placement. And I think it's one of those things where it's like sometimes when you're in a scoring drought, scoring one goal will just open the floodgates, and I'm really hoping that's what will happen for Alex Morgan, because we know what she can do. She has the experience, she has the confidence, she has the technical ability. It just hasn't been on for her recently, and so I think this goal is really going to help kickstart her into the form that we're used to seeing from her. My final thoughts. I think this game was the perfect response. I don't think we could have asked for anything other than what we got. Obviously, we gave up that one goal, but that's something that we can prevent, and that's something that we can fix. But I think there's a lot of positives we can take away from this game. Again, there's things we need to work on, like defending in the box, aerial presence. I think that's something we can fix. Maybe if I'm Australia and I'm doing my homework, I'm focusing on set pieces and counterattacks, because I think those are two areas that we definitely need to work on, staying more compact in the middle and making sure that we don't make silly mistakes that can lead to the counterattack. And then we also have to make sure we watch out for a player like Sam Kerr, make sure she doesn't get on the ball. And I think if we can shut her down, we'll be good, but we also have to make sure that the service is shut down to her as well. So we need to make sure our midfielders are really tight defensively, our press is good, and that we stay even across the field. If we come out strong, we score quickly, I think if we place a lot of pressure on Australia's holding midfielders, we'll be really successful, because in the past I've noticed that their holding midfielders have a hard time going forward. They tend to like to go backwards. So if we can get a lot of pressure on their holding midfielders and force them to go back, we can then make the turnover. I think a player like Carly Lloyd would be great for that. Obviously Tobin, I feel like, is not going to start because she just had the full 90. Press will probably start, and then I assume maybe Alex Morgan or Megan Rapinoe, I'm not sure. So overall, I think it was the best response we could have asked from this team. The next game against Australia isn't necessarily a must win. The third place teams, depending on goal differential and points, they will move on. I think we would move on. I'm not 100% sure, but even if it's not a must win, it is a must win for us, because that's the mentality we have to have going into this tournament. Every game has to be a must win. You're failing yourself by underestimating your opponent if you're going to do that. So I think against Australia, we're going to see the same start. We're going to come out strong, fast, and I think if we can get a goal quickly, make sure we stay strong defensively, and just continue to attack over and over, I think we should be good. Focus on possession. Focus on tiring out Australia's team. Focus on their outside backs, attacking 1v1. I think with all those things combined, we can really make a huge difference against Australia. But again, at the end of the day, we'll find out. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and let me know what you think down below. Let me know what you thought of the players. If there's anything I missed or you had any thoughts that I didn't necessarily cover, drop a comment down below. If you agreed with me, if you disagreed with me, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So yeah, see you guys later. Bye.